They told my son there was no room at the table. Not a seat, not a plate, not even a folding chair near the trash. My name is Lauren. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever watched the people you love reject your child, like they were never part of the family to begin with? It was Christmas Eve, and I was in scrubs, elbow deep in back-to-back emergencies at County General. Another 16-hour shift. Another holiday traded in for duty. But I wasn't worried. My parents had promised they'd take care of him, that he'd feel the warmth of family, even if I couldn't be there. He texted me once. Just once. Mom, they said there's no space left at the table. I'm headed home. I thought it was a joke, until I checked the time. 6:43 p.m. Dinner had just started, and my only child, my gentle, quiet, always smiling son, was driving alone through the cold, heading back to an empty house with no lights on and no leftovers waiting. I stared at my phone, numb. I called. No answer. I called my sister. She picked up. Loud laughter in the background. She said, "Oh, come on, Lauren. He's 16, not 6. He can handle one dinner alone." Then hung up. No apologies. No hesitation. Just cruelty. Casual, cold-blooded cruelty. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with him on the couch, microwaving store-brand mac and cheese while he pretended it didn't hurt. But I saw it. In the way he didn't meet my eyes. In the way he said, "It's fine," before I even opened my mouth. So I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I poured us 2 glasses of sparkling apple cider and told him, "Don't worry, baby. They'll remember this Christmas." But not for the reasons they think. Because sometimes revenge doesn't look like shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it looks like a quiet mother printing something important at 2:12 a.m. And the next morning, they open their front door to a letter taped right to the wreath. By 8:45 a.m., my phone started blowing up. By 9:02, my sister was screaming down the line. And all I said was, "Oh, you opened it. Good." Because the letter wasn't just paper. It was a mirror. And when they read it, they didn't see words. They saw every ugly truth they'd ever tried to hide. Let the holiday games begin. The letter was exactly 3 pages long. Typed, calm, deceptively polite, and signed with one name, mine. It started with a memory. Christmas 2012. You told my son he was too young to help decorate the tree, then handed the star to Lily's toddler because she was more festive. Then another. Christmas 2016. You forgot his name on the gift tag. You wrote to Lauren's kid in Sharpie. And another. Christmas 2019. You made him take the photo, then posted, "Family all together," without him in it. I wasn't emotional. I was surgical. A decade of small betrayals, lined up like X-rays. Then came the second page. Legalese. Clean and brutal. Effective immediately. The deed to the family cabin in Vermont was being transferred into my name only, per the quiet refinancing I'd handled last March. The one they all signed, laughing because I was the responsible one. Effective immediately, the $12,000 property tax I'd paid for their main house, the one they still hadn't reimbursed, would be called in. With interest. Effective immediately, the family vacation fund I'd bankrolled for 8 years straight, canceled. Refunds processed. Cards reversed. And at the very bottom, please do not contact my son until you learn how to treat him like a human being. Until then, consider yourselves blocked. I didn't answer their calls that morning. Or the dozen voicemails. Not even when my sister yelled, "You're being petty," over one night. Because they still didn't get it. It wasn't one night. It was every Christmas they chipped away at his spirit. Every dinner he sat at the kids' table while their kids had private bedrooms and applause. Every sideways glance when he asked to say grace. Every forgotten birthday, every secondhand gift still in the plastic. I gave them a choice for years. To see him. To really see him. Instead, they saw my child as a placeholder. An afterthought. An obligation. But now, they were starting to see him as something else. As the reason their little empire, their cozy traditions, their shared beach trips, their photo-perfect holidays, was falling apart because I wasn't just withdrawing money, I was withdrawing myself. And in doing so, I took the bridge with me. And bridges don't beg to be crossed again. They collapse quietly and leave those on the other side stranded. By New Year's Eve, the silence was louder than any explosion of fireworks. They hadn't seen it coming. Not the letter, not the fallout, definitely not the court notice that arrived on December 30th, informing them that the joint trust fund Dad set up for the grandkids had a new trustee me. They tried to call my bluff, but I wasn't bluffing. For years, I played their game, funded their flights, split their bills, bought matching pajamas for family photos, only to watch them crop my son out of the frame every single time. Now they were scrambling. My dad sent a voice note. "Lauren, you're being overdramatic. Let's talk this through like adults." My sister wrote a message so long, it needed to be sent in parts. She called it a misunderstanding, said the table was just full, said her husband forgot to bring an extra chair, said I was letting my nurse stress cloud my judgment. But I wasn't clouded. I was crystal clear. I looked at my son, 16 years old, quiet, observant, already too used to being excluded. He said nothing through all this. Didn't ask me to stop. Didn't ask for revenge. But when I told him what I'd done, how I'd shifted every account they once relied on into a separate family trust under his name, he whispered one thing. "Thank you for choosing me." That's when I knew. This wasn't about revenge. It was about repair. Repairing the years I let them chip away at his confidence. Repairing the parts of myself that always stayed silent to keep the peace. Repairing the boundary between what I owed them and what I owed my child. Because blood may be thicker than water, but respect? Respect is the real currency of family. And they'd gone bankrupt. So I didn't just cut them off. I gave them a taste of what they gave my son. A holiday alone. No cabin. No calls. No cash. And when my sister posted a New Year's picture, it was different this time. No coordinated outfits. No matching mugs. No caption. Just 3 adults sitting around a half-eaten dinner. And an empty chair in the corner. Poetic, isn't it? How the people who never made room for him suddenly had so much space. They showed up at my door on January 3rd. No warning. No text. Just 3 knocks. Sharp, desperate, and familiar. I opened the door and found my sister standing there with fake humility stretched across her face, holding a pie. A pie. Like this was some kind of sitcom apology. Behind her, my parents hovered, Dad looking everywhere but my eyes, Mom clutching her purse like it held a lifeline. "We just want to talk," my sister said. I didn't invite them in. Instead, I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. My son was inside, safe, warm. This wasn't going to touch him. Not anymore. "We were wrong," my mom started, but he should have said something if he felt left out. I blinked. "He was 16, Mom. You're the adult. You're the family." Then I asked, "What exactly are you sorry for?" They froze. Because they weren't ready for that. They wanted an emotional outburst. Not a quiet demand for specifics. "You're being unforgiving," my dad said. "Family is family." I smiled. "No. Family is action. Not blood. Not tradition. Not last names." They looked at me like I was speaking a language they'd never heard. And maybe I was. The language of boundaries. The language of finally saying no more. I handed them a folder. Inside, the documentation showing I'd legally removed their names from every shared asset. Cabin. Trust. Vacation property. Gone. "I'm not doing this to be cruel," I said. "I'm doing this because kindness with no accountability is just enabling." My sister's mouth twisted. "But what about forgiveness?" I leaned in. "I gave forgiveness. Years ago. You called it weakness." Then I pointed to the car at the curb. "You can keep the pie. It's the only thing left you brought that doesn't harm." I turned, walked back inside. Behind me, my son stood in the hallway. He looked up at me and asked, "Are they gone?" I nodded. He exhaled. And in that moment I realized something. Sometimes protecting your child means becoming the storm, not the calm, not the healer, but the reckoning. And when love is real, it doesn't ask for a seat at the table. It builds its own. 2 weeks passed. No calls. No visits. Just silence. Bitter, hollow silence from the people who once never stopped asking for favors. But the town talked. Oh, they always talk. Especially when a nice family like mine suddenly cancels their annual winter retreat. Especially when their accounts freeze and their pictures vanish from the cabin's Airbnb listing. They spun stories, of course. My sister told her friends I was having a breakdown. My mom whispered I'd gone rogue after too many night shifts. My dad? He told the church I was just dealing with trauma and would come to my senses eventually. But no one mentioned the boy they'd forgotten. The boy who drove home alone on Christmas night with a smile still painted on just to protect me. They erased him from the narrative. Again.
So, I did something they didn't expect.
I wrote a letter. This time for the world. I posted it on my private blog. No names. No slander. Just truth. On Christmas night, my teenage son was turned away from the table where he should have been welcomed with open arms. He ate alone in a cold house while laughter echoed from a room he wasn't allowed to enter. This isn't about revenge. It's about awareness. Silence can look like strength, but sometimes it's just inherited pain. And I'm done passing that down. It went viral. Thousands of comments. Messages from strangers. Other mothers. Other daughters. People who'd sat beside trash cans, been cropped out of photos, or walked home from celebrations where their names were never said aloud. And somewhere in that digital crowd, they saw it too. Because my sister deleted her Instagram. My mom turned off her Facebook. My dad asked me to take the post down. But I didn't. Because truth doesn't come with a dimmer switch. Once you shine it, the shadows run. And maybe that's what they needed. To feel what it's like to be on the outside looking in. To finally understand what my son had endured. Not for one night, but every holiday, birthday, and family photo for 16 years. And if that truth made them uncomfortable,
good.
Growth always starts in discomfort. And I wasn't raising my son to make anyone else comfortable. I was raising him to know his worth, even if it meant burning down the table he was never invited to sit at. The fire had been lit, and not just online. At school, teachers pulled my son aside, not to pity him, but to say they saw him now, that they'd never realized he carried so much with so little complaint. He just nodded, quiet as ever. But when we got home, he handed me something. It was a Christmas card, drawn by hand, a sketch of our tiny living room, that lonely night, microwave meals and all. And across the bottom, in gold marker, best Christmas ever. I cried, not because it was the best, but because that boy, he had taken pain, abandonment, rejection, and still found something beautiful in the ashes. Meanwhile, the cracks in my parents' polished lives were beginning to show. I got a call from the Vermont town clerk's office. Apparently, my parents tried to file a dispute over the cabin deed. They were told, firmly, that all documents were airtight, legally sound, and fully executed. Then came the call from my sister's husband. They were declined for a mortgage pre-approval.
Why?
Because the line of credit they used for years under my name had been revoked. Consequences. Real ones. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't storming their house. I was simply doing what they never expected, stepping out of the role they wrote for me. No longer the peacekeeper. No longer the dependable doormat. I was the mother of a boy who deserved better than their traditions of conditional love. And the most painful part? They still didn't get it. They kept calling it a feud, a rift, something fixable. But it wasn't. Because this wasn't a disagreement. It was a reckoning. A closing of accounts, emotional, financial, generational. They'd mistaken my silence for acceptance, my reliability for permission, and my kindness for compliance. But the truth is, kindness is not the absence of boundaries. It's the courage to protect what's sacred. And this year, the only thing sacred was my son's peace. No more table scraps. No more, maybe next year. No more begging for a seat in rooms we helped build. This time, we weren't knocking on their door. We were locking ours. 3 weeks after the letter, the final shoe dropped. A certified envelope arrived from my father's accountant. It was a desperate attempt, a poorly worded offer to revisit arrangements regarding the family estate. Translation? They realized just how much they depended on me all these years. The cabin maintenance? That was me. The accountant's retainer fee?
Me.
Even the prepaid funeral plan for both my parents? That was my signature on the check. They never noticed, because I never asked for applause. I just did it, quietly. But now, the silence was working against them. They begged for meetings, mailed apology cards, one even written in my mother's handwriting, shaky and uncertain. And for the first time in my life, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a stillness I'd never known. Peace born from clarity. Because forgiveness doesn't always come with reconnection. Sometimes it comes with release. So I wrote back one last time. A single sentence. You cannot ask to inherit the fruits of love you never watered. No signature. No warmth. Just truth. That same night, I took my son out for dinner. A real dinner. Linen napkins, soft jazz, sparkling cider in real flutes. He wore a shirt he picked himself, a little wrinkled but perfect. As we waited for dessert, he looked around and asked, "Why are people looking at us?" I smiled. They're not used to seeing peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. He grinned. And for the first time I saw it. He wasn't just healing. He was glowing. Because he had finally been shown what it meant to be chosen. To be protected. To be seen. Not tolerated. Not accommodated.
Seen.
And in that moment, I realized something I wish I'd known years ago. We waste too much time trying to fit into families that only love versions of us that keep them comfortable. But real love, fierce, unconditional, inconvenient love, doesn't ask you to shrink. It asks you to stand. And that night, across from me, my son stood taller than I'd ever seen. Not because of revenge, but because I finally made space for him, where no one could take it away. February came, quiet and gray. But in our home, something had shifted. My son laughed more. He asked questions again about colleges, about road trips, about life. He even taped his drawing, "The Best Christmas Ever" one, on the fridge like a badge of honor. We were building something, not out of spite, but out of truth. Out of the wreckage of people who once claimed to love us, but only ever loved their version of silence. Then one morning I got an email from the local community center. Subject line, "Holiday volunteer thank you." They were thanking my son. He'd signed up on his own, quietly, to serve meals on Valentine's Day to people who had nowhere to go. I stared at the email. Tears filled my eyes. He didn't just survive what they did. He grew from it. He turned absence into empathy, and cold shoulders into open hands. That night, I sat him down, told him the whole truth. How I used to make excuses for them. How I silenced myself just to be invited. How I confused proximity with love. And how that confusion ended the moment they closed the door on him. He didn't say much. He just nodded. Then said, "It's okay, Mom. You made sure I didn't carry it forward." And that was everything. Because cycles don't end in explosions. They end in choices. And I chose to end ours the moment they chose a holiday photo over a human heart. I've learned that not everyone who shares your blood is your family. And not every door deserves to be kept open. Some must be locked. Some must be walked away from. And some must be burned down, so that your child can see that love doesn't beg. It stands. It protects. It says, "Not my son, not this time." And it rebuilds, not with tradition, but with truth. So no, they'll never sit at my table again. But every time my son laughs, every time he holds his head higher, every time he chooses kindness even after cruelty, that's the justice. That's the revenge. And that's the legacy I leave behind.